So we are giving continuation to chapter 9, chapter 19, I'm sorry, um, in which deals with the roles and of the mediums in communication. I'm sorry, I went a bit too far out. No, I'm not. That's correct. And we spoke last week on many questions the Kardec have, dealing primarily with the physical aspect of the medium. So does medium feel and not feel? How's the consequences of the exercise of mirrorship on the medium, primarily on the physical body of the medium, the exhaustion, the feeling tired, all those things that are very common. We spoke about mediumship in children. We spoke about the anemic process, and when a medium is able to provide a communication from him or herself. Well, that's been covered last week. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to try to address it. But today we continue with question number 7, in which Kardec will now address more the influence of the medium's spirit in the communications. It's interesting that it's hard for me to say the medium's spirit, but Kardec is making a point to question what's the interference, if there is any, of the mind and the intellectual and moral qualities of the medium in the mediumistic process, or it's not really a problem if it happens regardless of the medium's intellectual and emotional state, if anything affects the communication itself. So number 7, please.
Okay. Number 7. Nonetheless, there are children who are natural mediums.
Wait a minute, is that?
Number 7.
No, it's not there.
Is this the medium's book that's displayed?
There's a medium's book. Should be, yeah.
No, that's not it.
Yes,
It's a
that's not it.
My medium's
What?
book is different.
Mine too.
Oh, yes.
Where are we?
Number
This is chapter 18, Problems and Dangers of Mediumship.
No,
No,
19.
19.
Oh, sorry.
No, no
Okay.
problem.
There we go.
Okay.
Yes, okay.
Okay, number 7. Does the medium's spirit influence the communications that it must transmit from other spirits? Yes, because if there is no affinity between them, the medium's spirit could alter the responses by adapting them to its own ideas and tendencies, but it does not exert any influence on the communicating spirits themselves. It is merely a bad interpreter.
Thanks. I think this is very important.
Mm.
We can divide this answer in 2 parts. Right, let's read the question again. Does the medium's spirit influence the communication that it must transmit from other spirits? In other words, let's assume that I am a reporter doing an interview, I don't know, with the president in the White House. And I put a question, the president answers, and let's say that it's to be published, right? And then when it's time to publish, I write whatever I want to write. not necessarily what was the answer from the president. So in reality, I'm here, I'm a bad interpreter. I am putting my own input in accordance to my prejudices, in accordance to my interests, and I am deviating from the reality of what the president's trying to say. We need to understand once and for all that the mediums, it's not an inert object. It's not a pure microphone that you plug in the wall, it has no intelligence, has no feeling. A medium carries its own prejudices. A medium carries its own interests. A medium carries its own level of understanding of the thoughts that he or she is receiving. So a medium will always have a degree of participation in all communications. Kardec stresses over here the issue of affinity. Yes, that's important, but that will really leave it clear that is an uneducated medium. The same way that if I'm a reporter interview the president in the White House and I write down whatever I think is best to write down, I'm just a bad reporter. And we're going to go through many questions that we deal with this here, that to imagine that the medium, that we as human beings will be completely 100% external to the communication is asking too much of us. So there will be always a degree of the participation of the medium in any and all communication. Even on the mechanical ones, as we're going to see ahead. Even in the most unconscious type of mediumship, there will be a degree of participation of the medium, as minimum as possible. The most well-educated and prepared medium will have the least input of him or herself in the communication, and the least prepared, the least educated mediums will load that communication with his or her own agenda or because in reality the medium is always an interpreter. The same way that a translator is an interpreter. Questions? This is very important here because this is the basis of all the discussions we're going to read here. Okay, number 8.
Is that why certain spirits prefer certain mediums? There is no other reason. They look for the interpreter who best sympathizes with them and transmit their thought most precisely. If there is no sympathy between them, the medium's spirit will be antagonistic and will put up resistance, making itself an unwilling and almost always unfaithful interpreter. You yourselves experience the same thing when the ideas of a scholar are transmitted by a foolish or dishonest person.
Okay, let's imagine ourselves if we are going to transmit our message to someone, and the someone will pass that message to everyone else. Who would you pick? Who would you choose to be that person if you had a choice? Naturally, you'd pick someone that you trust, someone that you think will be truthful to the message that you passed, that you believe has the intellectual ability to understand completely what you are saying, to deliver it closest to your thought as possible. That's what I would pick if I have a choice, right? Now, why would the spirits be acting different? If they have the ability to choose which medium, it would be by a cast of affinity, and that cast of affinity may be extended to many different ways. What do you mean by affinity? Maybe the affinity on at an intellectual level, maybe an affinity at the um, moral level. It may be an affinity of likes and dislikes. It may be an affinity of language. Communication is done via thought, but the thought has to be dressed with words. So perhaps that mirror you prefer someone that he trusts will use a vocabulary or a language that is more appropriate to those thoughts, or more appropriate to the crowd that is choosing to achieve. So there is many ways that we can see affinity here, but the same way that any one of us would choose someone that you trust the most to pass our thoughts to others, so will spirits. That's obvious. And of course, you would avoid someone that you'd not trust to be able to overcome his or her own prejudices, or her own intellectual inabilities. You do not pick that person if you had a choice. And Kardec stated over here that the spirits make those choices. Different kinds of mirrorships, naturally. Perhaps when he was doing, let's say, the book Heaven and Hell, several meters in the room, and they would ask for their evocations, right? Do the evocation ask for the participation of such and such spirit? And among us 4 or 5 meters present, one would be the lucky one. Why is that one the lucky one? Likely because of that affinity. Okay. Now it's very important that you remember here that a spirit, that a medium, let's say, who was always receiving angry, rebellious spirit doesn't mean that medium is the same. Okay, you have to make sure that you understand it very well. Okay. Let's give an example also that, I don't know, a spirit of a slave owner who is still angry that slavery has ended because he believes that whites does have the right of ownership of blacks, and blacks has to be subjected to whites. To have that spirit to come and give communication through, let's say, a black medium would be complicated. Would be complicated. It would not be the best choice. So let's imagine in case, let's say, such a rebellious spirit would probably not be in the condition of choose anything, right? It would be such a rebellious and an ignorant state that would not making any choices. So spirits will go to a spiritist center to have that communication, to receive the help, the assistance, and if the mentors of the house believe that these spirits would benefit from providing a communication, the methods of the house would make that selection, would select the best medium for that spirit. And that happens all the time. They will approximate those two perispirits in accordance to which medium can better deliver the communication, at the same time assist that spirit at the same throughout the communications as well. So if the spirit cannot choose in many situations, it will be chosen for the spirit.
Mm.
Does it make any sense? Any questions? All right, you continue then.
Okay. Number 9, we can understand how this might be true of intuitive mediums, but not when we are dealing with mechanical mediums. You do not understand the medium's role very well. There is a law that still escapes you. Remember that in order to produce the movement of an inert object, the spirit requires a portion of the medium's animalized fluid, which it uses to momentarily animate a table, for example, making it obey its will. Very well, for an intelligent communication, it also needs an intelligent intermediary, and this intermediary is the medium's spirit. This does not seem to apply to what we call talking tables, because when they and other inert objects, such as pochettes and baskets, respond intelligently, it appears that the medium spirit does not participate in any way. That is a mistake. A spirit can give momentary fictitious life to an inert object, but not intelligence. An inert object has never had intelligence. It is therefore the medium spirit who receives the thought without realizing it and transmits it little by little with the help of various intermediaries.
Thanks. So you remember when I read 7, the very first one, that concept was the foundation. It's very important for us to understand the rest of those answers over here, and especially on this topic over here. First of all, one thing very important is pre-tolerance. We do not understand the medium's role very well. We still don't. That science of the spiritualism is lacking behind. We don't really know all that very well. The degree of participation of the medium in a communication. But what the spirits are telling is that something is very important. There are say a table. We all agree as does not have intelligence nor feeling. Now the same is applied to the ectoplasm that is surrounding that table and allowing that table to move at the will of the spirit. But yet, in order for that table to provide intelligent answers, it has to receive an input for the medium who is donating that ectoplasm. So there is unwilling, unaware, or perhaps willing and aware, the medium is always intellectually somehow active in that communication. This is hard to understand. I see over here there are question marks, and for the first time that I studied this, because I use the same book, especially when it comes to the physical manifestations, it's really very easy for us to just take that inanimate object, being a chair or a table or whatever, is coated by the ectoplasm of the medium. And when that happens, the spirits can use that ectoplasm to manipulate that object? Yes. But to manipulate that object to provide intelligent answers or to act as if has intelligent and emotions, there is a degree of participation of the medium to render that object to behave in intelligent or emotional manner. There is always a degree of participation of the medium. That the medium is not completely absent of that communication. I'll donate my ectoplasm and I'm done. Aware or unaware, willing or unwilling. Once it donates that ectoplasm is of that medium, and the medium is somehow involved with the intelligent phenomena that happens. And by that I mean when that table or where that chair provides intelligent answers to questions. The thought comes from the spirit, the ectoplasm comes from the medium, but the medium also assists somehow in allowing the thoughts to go to that ectoplasm. It has to go through that medium. What the medium may or may not be aware of it. And this is complex. This is complicated. We need to understand that the medium is always the captain of the boat in a communication. The mediums, even if unaware, is leading that communication, is leading that mediumistic phenomena. Okay?
Number 10. Do these explanations imply that the spirit of the medium is never completely passive? It is passive when it does not mix its own ideas with those of the communicating spirit, but it is never completely nullified. Its cooperation is indispensable as an intermediary, even in so-called mechanical mediums.
See, also very important. What the spirit means by passive in this case? It means passive as not allow its own thoughts, ideas, prejudices to alter the communication itself. That is the level of passivity that a well-educated medium we have. In other words, we will not clash, we will not fight with those ideas or those thoughts. We let it go. Even if it's against its own nature, even if it's against its own beliefs. That is the level of passivity. You not fight those thoughts. Just allow it to be expressed as is. Okay? And it's never completely nullified, as we also spoke about it. Okay?
Okay. 11. Isn't there a greater guarantee of independence in the mechanical medium than in the intuitive medium? Without a doubt. And for some communications, our mechanical medium is preferable. When we are familiar with the faculties of a particular intuitive medium, however, and depending on the circumstances, it does not matter. I mean that certain communications require less precision.
Okay. Also extremely important. We discuss a lot about being conscious and unconscious medium, about being further disconnected from the medium's perispirit, be further disconnected from the physical body. In the case, of course, of a mechanical or unconscious medium, it does, at least in theory, makes the the communication more reliable, more trustworthy, that everything that is coming out are thoughts of the spirit and not from the medium.
Mm.
It's, at least in theory, it's easy to understand that if the thoughts of bypassing the cognitive part of the brain of the medium, there will be less likely for the media to interfere. In theory, it makes completely sense. But you have to remember that just like the table and the chair and the pen and the pencil does not possess intelligence, neither does the brain. Intelligence belongs to the spirit. So it still has some degree of participation of the medium, even in the most unconscious kind of mediumistic phenomena. And again, the medium is still, should be at least, in control, should still be the captain of that ship. And uneducated, you better have an educated, fully conscious medium than an uneducated, fully unconscious medium providing communication.
Mm.
The one from the educated medium, regardless of being conscious or unconscious, is much more reliable and trustworthy than an uneducated medium being conscious or unconscious. That's easy to understand also, right?
Mm.
Elmo,
Mm-hmm.
but what do you mean by educated? Like academically educated?
Educated in the exercise of mediumship.
Also, like the spirit knows, the medium knows what it's doing, like the kind of studies we're having here.
Right.
Okay.
Educated on the exercise of mediumship with Jesus.
Okay, so you were giving the example of the reporter, right? That
Right.
a good reporter is not going to interpret in a way that it's not being the intermediary, like giving that news as the news is supposed to be, or that specific context. But we know that even the best reporters, they might be partial, or they might interpret at some level. It's never totally neutral, right?
Right.
So the medium is also in a way interpreting the message, or if it is educated, it has the knowledge, is trying to give the message as much as it's coming, or
Yes.
without knowing, we end up giving our own interpretation to that feeling, to that emotion, to those words that might be coming.
The better educated we are as a medium, the less of ourselves will be presented as the final result of that communication. The greater will be the fidelity of the words, of the thoughts of the spirit will be presented, being written or verbally. The less educated one is the one who you allow its prejudices, its intellectual agree or disagree with the thoughts of the spirit to interfere in the final result. So again, if I'm a medium of psychography, and let's say that I have a dislike to the clergy, and I receive a communication from ex-bishop who is writing all his love to the clergy, as a well-educated medium, will reflect all that likes of the clergy without allowing my personal opinion of the clergy to interfere with that. But if I'm not educated, then I will perhaps, at the final result, alter things in accordance with my prejudices and not be really fully representative of the thoughts of that bishop. So in other words, I may not like you, but if you give me a message, I will pass it as you gave it to me, to the best of my ability.
Mm.
That is an educated medium.
But for example, during the mediumship meetings that we have at the center, it's not only giving the message, just like speaking the words and trying to speak the words of the spirit, right? What the spirit really wants to say, but also there is body language, right? How the medium is moving, or the tone of the voice, the intonation. For example, reporters could also be giving the news, giving some tone to that message, like a comical tone, or some grievances that might be going through in the body language and everything. So in the case of an uneducated medium, it's not, would that be the case as well? Like, because it's not going through the lens of prejudice, for example.
I don't know. Oh, let's say the case of the reporter, let's say somebody giving the news on TV. There is a standard that has to be followed, and that standard should limit the emotional, the intellectual of the reporter to be a part of that news. Again, the good reporter will be as neutral as possible. At the time of editorials, that's why you have editorials. That's why you put your own 5 cents. But as a good reporter, you'll be try to be as neutral as possible and just present the news as is, presenting the interview as it was spoken. And then you have the editorial, then you can go and do what and put your 5 cents on to it. All right. The same thing with the medium. Now you have a tremendous differentiation between mediumship and this here, that now you are so integrated perispirit to perispirit to that discarnate spirit that you may have a little bit of change of voices, that you may perhaps have some body motions that is particular to that spirit. But again, an educated spirit will express the feelings, the thoughts, the anger, the sentiments, the emotions of that spirit in a admissible, so to say, level. We will not be banging on the floor, even if the spirit wants he or she to do so. We will not be screaming, even if the spirit wants to do so. And sometimes the spirits will say, "I cannot say what I want to say," and we'll answer back, "Yes, you can express all your thoughts, you can express all your anger, you can express all your rebelliousness, but we will use words that is compatible with the energies of this establishment."
Mm.
In a well-educated medium will not make much of this screaming and angry and tapping on the table and tapping on the floor. Happens. Okay, it's totally fine. Okay, it doesn't mean that the medium has lost control. You have to remember again that the integration of those two perispirits is extremely strong, and to ask the medium to be completely passive is asking too much.
Can I just say something about Daniela's question in regards to the work that is done at the center? And this is always to be true in all serious centers like ours whenever you do the mediumship meetings. Now, every meeting in majority of these meetings are in different levels of learning their mediumship. Anytime that I see it, this is how I see it, anytime that I see mediums wanting to participate in the mediumship groups, it's because it's their time to face this gift they were given and how they're going to deal with it. So when I started there, I remember going through some of the emotions that you're just describing. There were spirits that wanted to dance, and there were spirits that wanted to get up and do things, but I just never felt that that was the place for it. And I don't think that I would be allowed to express myself in that center the way that they wanted me to. Had I been in another situation, say in a Umbanda session, which I had been as someone not participating, I was just there to watch, I probably would have expressed myself completely different if I was a medium working in there, because it's a completely different work. And they're completely different medium also. I'm not judging anyone, but it's a completely different medium who is decided to lead that life, to use that mediumship in that kind of work. But yes, there is, and before I started working in the center in this work, I used to be able to smell different perfumes and different people that would smoke. There was like a smell of cigarettes or smell of alcohol, two things that I don't do, cigarettes or alcohol. I would have that immense, strong smell of those things. That doesn't happen. That happened once or twice, way before when my mediumship was starting to flourish. And thank God I got to the sense of looking for ways of utilizing it for a good purpose. And that's how I started the work at the center. And I don't know if that answered some of your questions, but that's what I had to say.
Fabio, but
Thanks, Fabio.
did you smell spirits, like, or did you smell?
No, if
that
I
in
could
the room?
smell, for instance, if the spirit smoked, there
Oh,
was
okay.
an enormous smell of cigarettes around me, or if the spirit drank, that drench of alcohol in the clothing, it was to that level.
When you were being a medium, giving a communication.
Yes, but again, this is before I started working in the center, doing the work that is done every Mondays. This is at a time when I always had a mediumship and I've always expressed it somehow, but this is how it was coming to me. I wasn't, to the whole point of this is I wasn't being correctly guided, and like today, I'm sure that even this past Monday, there are meetings in the group, they're in different levels. So they are receiving different types of messages according to their level of mediumship, because they are developing it. They're going to probably reach a point where it's going to be the level that they have to reach of mediumship in this life.
Yeah, when it comes to sensations, being of seeing, of smelling, of feeling pain, something, that is from the perispirit of that spirit that you will feel, you have it. That's one thing. It's the education that's required here is when you transmit with the greater fidelity the thoughts of that spirit, without allowing yourself to interfere the minimum to the final result of that communication. But if the spirit comes in and smells like flowers, you smell the flowers. If they come in smelling like cigarettes, you smell the cigarettes. That's just the nature of the mediumistic ability of that medium that can change with time as well.
Yes, and to that also, I just want to add one thing that he just reminded me of. The smell of roses I used to smell whenever I would have communications from family members of mine. But again, please, this is just me as my experience as a medium. I was lucky enough to at one point have received communications from people from my family, and then the smell of roses would like invaded the room, and it was overwhelming too. So just to show, I don't have to go through this experience anymore. I don't know if I needed to. I don't know if I want to, but just to show that this kind of palpable feeling, because even though it's a smell, but you know exactly what I'm talking about, it's no longer necessary.
Great, thanks, Fabio. That's very, very, very helpful.
Sure, thank you.
Any more comments, questions? Okay, you move on.
Number 12, the theory of inert mediums. Among the different theories proposed to explain spirit phenomena, there is one that presumes that there is true mediumship in inert objects. For example, in the basket or cardboard box that serves as the instrument. The communicating spirit would identify itself with the object and render it not only living but also intelligent, which has given rise to the designation inert mediums to such objects. What is your opinion? I only need to state the following. If the spirit were to transmit intelligence to the box and give it life, the box would be able to write by itself without the medium's support. It would be as strange for an intelligent person to become a machine as for an inert object to become intelligent. This is one of the many theories derived from preconceived ideas and which will crumble in the light of experience and observation.
Okay, so this is perhaps one of the few topics that I question. Why is the Kardec even bother with this? In truth. And then I go back to the historical aspect of the development of the mediumship, or something was of the spiritism, I'm sorry. Something that was perhaps important to address at that time. Was already discussed, and that a table is a table, always going to be a table. You never have intelligence. You never have the ability of mediumship. It's very important to say it would be as strange as for an intelligent person to become a machine, as for an inert object to become intelligent. So that is, this statement to me is precious because it covers everything that is spoken before and everything that is speaking here right now. Do not ask a medium to be a machine, to be completely nullified during a communication, have absolutely zero input. It's not a machine, it's a human being with feelings, with emotions, with own prejudices, with his intellectual ability and disabilities. It always you have some degree of participation. And do not ask also a glass or a table or a chair to become intelligent. It does not have the capability to do so, or you'll never be. So the issue of the theory of inert mediums, to me, it's ended right here, right now. But we will finish this up.
Okay.
Next.
13. A well-known phenomenon seems to make acceptable the idea that there is an inert animated object more than just life, perhaps even intelligence. It is the phenomenon of tables, baskets, etc., expressing anger or affection in their movements. When an angry man shakes a stick, it is not the stick that is angry or even the hand that is holding it, but rather the thought that directs the hand. Tables and baskets are no more intelligent than a stick. They have no intelligent sentiment, but obey an intelligence. In other words, a spirit neither transforms itself into a basket nor chooses to dwell in it.
You
14.
can carry the next one also, yes.
Yeah, okay, 14. If it is unreasonable to attribute intelligence to these objects, could we nevertheless regard them as a variety of medium and designate them as inert mediums? This is a matter of words, which mean little to us, provided you yourselves understand what you mean by them. You are free to call a puppet a man.
I think in this answer, if you could say in a different word, of course, they are enlightened spirits. They're not going to say it. But to me, they are tell to Kardec, enough already. You want to call these things inert meters, go ahead, whatever you want. But just make sure that you understand the meaning of what you are saying here now, okay? It's almost like the spirits got fed up with this topic that is absolute and absurd, all right? And the answer on 14 is so proper. When an angry man shakes the stick, it's not the stick that is angry, or even the hand that is holding it, or not even the brain that makes that hand to shake it. It's the spirit that's angry. Is this that brain, that arm, that hand, and that stick? It is simply obeying the eternal spirit. It's acting on behalf of that eternal spirit. So the spirit is angry. The spirit is upset. So there is no inert mediumship. But if you insist you want to call it inert mediums, I'm sorry. If you insist you want to call it, go ahead, I give up. But to expect that an inert object would have the ability to transmit thoughts on its own is as absurd as a cow flying by flipping its ears. It's not going to happen. It doesn't exist. And again, if at one point it was important in the development of the mediumship, I'd say enough already. I don't need to deal with this anymore. We can start the next topic. I think I have what, another 7 minutes.
You want me to start?
I think so. 7 minutes is too.
Okay.
It's a lot of time.
Yes. The aptitude of certain mediums for things they do not know, languages, music, and drawing, etc. Spirits only have the language of thought, not articulated speech. Therefore, they use only one language. Thus, a spirit could express itself mediumistically in a language it had never spoken when incarnate. In this case, where does it get the words it uses? You already answered this question by yourself when you said that spirits only have one language, which is that of thought. Everyone understands this language, both humans and spirits. When addressing the incarnate spirit of the medium, the discarnate spirit does not speak in French or English, but in the universal language of thought. In order to translate its ideas into articulated, transmissible language, it utilizes the vocabulary of the medium.
Okay, I think we have spoke up of this many, many times. The communication happens through the approximation of the two perispirits. And again, we're dealing here primarily with psychographies and psychophonies, okay?
Yeah.
The two perispirits approximate. The medium is in a mediumistic trance. It may be very, very deep trance or very, very light trance, almost imperceivable, but enough to have a little expansion or a further expansion of his or her perispirit that allows the approximation of the perispirit of a discarnate spirit to interact with that perispirit of the medium. At that moment, there is an exchange of thought, energy, as if you are cold and your hands are cold and you touch your friend. This friend will receive the coldness, so to say, from your hands, right? Because it's that contact right there. It's right, and the warmth, the same thing. You pass the energies of heat to that person. The same thing happens here at the perispiritual level. There is an exchange of energies, and one of those energies is thought. Now, hard for us to accept it's so abstract, so the thought without a language. Because if I say, think of an orange, you may think of an orange. But the only way that I can pass to you this thought is using articulated language. But when you mentalize that orange, you didn't mentalize the word orange. You mentalize the fruit orange. As hard as it is for us to understand, that's the fact. When I ask you to think of a house, you mentalize a house without words. You just mentalize a house. When the spirits pass the thought to us, they come naked. They come only the energy. We grasp that energy, you interpret that energy, then you have to dress that energy with something that makes sense for us and for everyone else around. I have to dress that thought the same way that I'm dressing my thoughts right now. Use the English language with all my difficulties to express in this language. You are receiving my thoughts dressed with words of the English language. But the thought itself is not words. So when I receive the thoughts from a spirit, I have to dress it as a medium with words. And I'm going to have to use the words that I have within me. It's going to come out in English or in Portuguese because I cannot write in Spanish. I can speak, but I cannot write it. Perhaps I could speak it. But if it's in a psychography, it's going to have to come out in English or in Portuguese. Since I have both and I can write in both, the spirit may lead me to pick one or another. I have it there. And I can write in English or I can write in Portuguese. The spirit will help me, will guide me to use what I already have. It's not just giving me anything. It's there already. I have to start with some words. And you may say, well, you have both of them. I'd rather if you pick English. And I may write in English or may speak in English. Now, I have to have it as a medium, that language in order to express it. Does it make sense? Questions? Okay, so I think we stop here because then we will continue of having it not at the conscious level, but having it as a medium at the subconscious level. Because as a medium, Elmo, consciously I can only write in 2 languages, but it's very likely that the Eternal Spirit playing the role of Elmo, had experience with other languages, especially as we live in the new world, and perhaps our previous incarnation was in the old worlds, maybe Africa, maybe Europe, maybe the Middle Eastern or the Far East. So it's very likely to consider the idea that the Eternal Spirit Elmo, have had contact and may be able to write in other languages other than Portuguese and English. But in this incarnation, that's the one that I have at the conscious level. At the outside of the conscious level, in a state of trance, mediumistic trance in this case, I may be able to retrieve, or a spirit may be able to retrieve for me other languages that I had used in the past and that I do have in my, let's say, in my language files, somewhere in my perispirit. Okay? So you'll close here now
Okay,
with our prayer.
yes. To our beloved Father, our Christ, to our spiritual benefactors that have come here again and contributing to our learning and understanding the Spirit's book and the Medium's book. With gratitude in our hearts, we thank you, dear Lord, for allowing us and teachers that continue to foster us to move forward and learning who we really are. We thank you, dear Lord, and we ask as we leave here today to continue through studies throughout the week, our classes, with our brothers and sisters. May we continue with our prayers at home, directing our prayers to those that are in need, dear Father, who are still struggling and going through hardships. May our prayers assist them and help them and guide them throughout this time of pain and suffering. We thank you, dear Lord, and we ask that our spiritual meetings, the Spiritist Group of New York, be blessed and cared for always. For our teachers, our mediums, our brothers and sisters that join throughout the week, may we all be blessed and grateful for what we receive when we meet. And with this in mind, dear Lord, we ask permission to close our meeting tonight. So be it.